Jesus seems to praise the dishonest manager momentarily. But then, when he's caught our attention by surprising us with that praise, he gives us some real words of wisdom. It's true, isn't it, that the person you can trust with taking care of small things is also trustworthy with bigger things? And the person you can't trust with something small, you certainly can't trust with something of great value to you? Then the two masters thing. It is true, we cannot equally divide our loyalties. I've been trying for about 7 years to divide myself between two professions, two callings on my life. I can tell you with absolute honesty that I have yet to find balance. Sometimes my practice gets the majority of my time, energy, and interest. Sometimes ministry gets the biggest share. I love them both, but I don't love them equally. As I thought about this comparison of our loyalty to God and to money, I thought about the irony that our financial wealth, our money in this country declares, "In God we trust." And I wondered, is that true? Do we really place more trust in God than in our financial security? Where else in our lives do we trust something or someone more than we trust God? And if we trust something more than God, then do we really love God first? I found myself guilty many times of placing my trust in something other than God. It hasn't usually worked out very well. When I think I'm all self-sufficient and self-reliant, that's when I'm due for a wake-up call. Thankfully, most of those wake-up calls have been gentle reminders that God is who provides for my needs, and that I am a participant in that process, but not the ultimate source. One of my many gifts, one that I have appreciated throughout my life, is writing. It's actually my preferred method of communication. I don't have to worry about getting too emotional to say what's on my mind if I can write those thoughts. I've used writing since I was a very small child. In first grade, when I wanted to be in a different reading group, but I was afraid to ask my teacher, I wrote her a note. It worked, sort of. Instead of moving me from the group I was in, she let me be in 2 reading groups. Since I loved to read, that was just fine with me. During seminary, we did a lot of writing. I had come to take my gift so much for granted over the years that I no longer saw it as something unique. I was surprised to discover that many of the students in classes with me found writing to be a big challenge. I couldn't understand their struggles. I had grown to trust my own abilities. Then suddenly things changed. As most of you know, my dad died while I was still in seminary. Fortunately, I wasn't in classes at that time, but the next semester started just a couple of weeks later. I was in a hurry to finish my degree, so I signed up for a very heavy class load. I wasn't worried though, because I had complete faith in my intellect and my writing skills. Then out of nowhere, suddenly, I couldn't write. I couldn't put together a sentence, let alone string together a coordinated, coherent thought. I didn't know what to do. I had never been unable to trust my own brain before. Grief was showing itself in a way that I had never encountered. Instead of sadness or depression, it was affecting my most trusted abilities to learn, to organize my thoughts logically, and to write. I was confronted with a huge reality. When it came to academics, I had been putting my faith in myself. I trusted in my own intellect. I believed in my ability to write. But in the months following my dad's death, I had to learn to put my trust in God. In that moment in my life's journey, I couldn't do what had always been a reliable skill. The interesting thing was sermon writing wasn't affected as much as academic writing. I've always relied heavily on the direction of the Holy Spirit in sermon preparation, but in my academic work, I had the arrogance of Khan from Star Trek. I believed and placed my trust in the knowledge that mine is the superior intellect. It was a great life lesson to be forced to rely on God in a way that I never had to before. It's ironic to learn that lesson in that specific setting. As I was taking classes to prepare myself to be more qualified to help other people on their spiritual journeys, I was forced to make a leap of faith on my own spiritual journey. Fortunately, one of the classes I was taking was being taught by Dr. Julie Kilmer, the person who helped me to accept my call to ministry. She was aware of my recent loss, and she was also familiar with my academic abilities and my writing skills because we're friends and because I had taken other classes from her. She recognized a difference in my writing in my very first assignment for her class and asked me what was going on. Her insight and encouragement helped me to recognize that it was a part of grief and not a reason for panic. With prayers and lots of persistent effort, I managed to get through that semester, and by the end of the term, I'd made enough progress in my grief that my writing ability was back. But what an incredible eye-opener to learn in that setting to trust God and not my own abilities. How ironic to discover that in my path toward ministry, I was relying so heavily on myself instead of on God. Even though for years, one of my most loved verses of Scripture has been Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ, and I emphasize that through Christ part, I had compartmentalized my life to such an extent that I was doing academics solo. Instead of including through Christ as the true source of my ability to learn and to write, it was me. That struggle taught me to place my trust in God and not in myself. It reminded me that our gifts are just that, gifts. They come from God. We are blessed with them. We are expected to develop and to use them, but they are not of our own making. They are ours because God gave them to us. God entrusted us with them. When we place our trust in God, we then can more fully use our gifts that we've been given. In the parable of the shrewd manager, Jesus said that the one who's faithful in the little things can be trusted with much. God trusts us with the gifts we receive. Our challenge then is to honor that trust by faithfully using those gifts. May we always live in gratitude to God for all that has been given us. May we always trust God to give us what we need in order to answer God's calls in our lives. Our money declares, in God we trust. May we make it so in all areas of our lives. Amen.